A recent survey suggests that most companies are frustrated with their lack of progress with generative artificial intelligence, yet they keep throwing more and more money at the technology. Is this money drain going to keep going in 2025, or are we turning the corner and correcting some of the major problems? We're going to talk about that and other things on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me on the show today is Brett Roscoe. He is the Senior Vice President and GM of Cloud Data Governance and Cloud Ops for Informatica, as well as Blake Andrews. He is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Independent Financial. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Oh, thanks for having us. Great to be here.
All right, I want to talk about a lot of these issues. We've got a lot of data that's coming from the 2025 CDO Insights Report, which was a survey of 600 data leaders with more than $500 million in revenue from the U.S., UK, Europe, and Asia Pacific. And this is something that Informatica did, correct, Brett?
That's right. It's something we do annually now. Obviously, to your point, 600 CDOs across all geographies, all verticals. So we're trying to really hit a good representation of our customer base out there.
And the main goal, what was the main goal of the survey?
This year we really focused on, what are the stumbling blocks? What are your investment plans? What are the stumbling blocks? What are the issues or concerns you have around your AI and Gen AI projects? And certainly revealed some insightful information on kind of progress being made, investments, obviously big investments being made, but obviously some things that customers are battling in terms of moving forward.
And Blake, and you're involved in this. You're not one of the authors of the report, but you're involved in this in what way?
So I am a member of the Informatica CDO Executive Advisory Board, and providing industry insights and kind of validation of some of the findings of this report.
Right. So you're kind of representing the IT data side of things, or the CDOs of the world. Just kind of like validating a lot of these answers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So
Blake is a great resource. We use him. We've talked to him many times. Obviously, representing a lot of financial kind of big customers, enterprises trying to move their projects forward with Gen AI. So he's a good voice for a customer for us.
All right, cool. So, but when both of you look at the results of this year's survey compared to the one, I think the last one you did was in 2023, what were there any surprises or trends that are moving in one direction or the other, or does it validate basically the assumptions that you were going in with on the survey?
Well, so a couple of things that continue to validate, which is there's big investments, right? 87% said, hey, we're continuing to increase our investments in Gen AI from 2024 to 2025, just like we saw increased investments from 23 to 24. The interesting, I think the aha moment for us was a couple areas. Number one, they're struggling to move many of their Gen AI projects out of these proof of concepts or pilots into production. And we can talk about, several of the reasons for that.
Yep.
And then the other big one, 97% said, hey, we're having trouble, kind of proving ROI, justifying back to the business, to the constituents, to my business leaders across the organization, the value of these projects, right? And no doubt they see the value because they continue to invest, but showing that value or demonstrating that value continues to be a hurdle.
Yeah. Now, Blake, when you looked at the results, did this help either validate what you were feeling at Independent Financial with some of your projects, or was it like, oh, those are different than what we're experiencing, and maybe we're an outlier, maybe they're the outliers? Like, how did you react when you saw the results compared to your own answers or issues that are going on?
I think there were some of the things that resonated with me, some of the findings that resonated with me. But also the conversations that I've had with other CDOs through various networks, right? Comparing and contrasting the hurdles that we've each faced in our respective organizations. I think there was a lot of the findings that resonated when you started to aggregate those different anecdotal perspectives that I've heard. It really came to fruition in the results of this survey.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned this earlier, Brett, that about 2/3 of the people that were surveyed said that they were unable so far to transition even half of their Gen AI pilots to production. We've heard this 30% number from Gartner and some of the other research firms as well. What are the big reasons that you're seeing as why this is happening?
Yeah, we had a fairly even distribution across some of the reasons, but we had 5 core reasons, which was really consistent across the results. One was quality of the data, right? Making sure that my Gen AI projects are only going to produce results as good as the data that I'm putting into them. The second one was around privacy and security, making sure that personal and sensitive information or maybe regulated information is protected. The third area was our skill set or culture of the company, which was interesting because, right, it seems like people are really developing skill sets quickly, but still they're trying to make sure that they can step up and have the technical chops to build these models, but also the culture in the company to support Gen AI as a differentiator for each of the areas going forward. The last two were number 4 was regulatory compliance. How do I make sure I'm hitting regulatory compliance is evolving. The EU AI Act came out last year. There's other things on the horizon. There's even some state level regulations coming out. How do I make sure I'm hitting that compliance, improving that compliance? And then the last one was really the responsible use of AI. Like I want to make sure I'm using it ethically. I want to make sure I'm above board and that the results are not biased or erroneous or even having some kind of danger or impact, right?
Yeah. When you look at these reasons that you've bundled into five explanations, do they all seem about equal? Like if we were looking at a bar chart, would they all be equal, or does one dominate and then the other ones are like, okay, but we also have this, and this?
Yeah, it's fairly just like, for security, right? We had about 43% say, hey, the security is the issue. We had, quality, about 44% said it was a quality issue. So very evenly distributed. I think quality and privacy were the biggest, but the others were still very consistent, not that far off.
Yeah. Is there a sense that the companies that you've worked with and that you've spoken with, because you've gone around and discussed these results with a lot of customers and other people out there, is there a feeling that companies can get a handle on all 5 of these, or are they really looking to just tackle that security, data privacy thing first, and then they'll worry about the other stuff later? Blake, what are you hearing from your colleagues?
Yeah, I think that quality is always going to be, I won't say a challenge, but it's always something you've got to address, right? It's been a fundamental capability within the data management and data governance space since the space was invented, right?
Yeah.
So quality is always going to be a consideration, and it's interesting because AI really seems to be not a mirror for your data quality issues, but a magnifying glass. Whatever quality problems you have, AI is going to magnify them just because of the scope and the scale and the speed that platform can execute on. It's really going to magnify those data quality issues. So you've got to be really attuned to what those issues are, and you've also got to be kind of forward thinking to understand how the machine is going to interpret your data and look at the associations it's going to make, and some of the things that you're not going to see going into these pilots and these proof of concept projects. It's going to reveal some associations to you in the quality of your data that you didn't realize that were issues before.
Yeah.
So it's really a multidimensional problem on that front. Another big, like Brett was saying, the risk and compliance issues. Part of that I think you can solve for bringing in the privacy experts and the risk experts and your legal teams and all of those constituencies that are really focused on mitigating the issues and the risks associated with AI, bringing them on that journey early. A lot of teams are bringing them in. Technical teams are going behind the curtain and building a solution and saying, okay, we've got this thing. Now look at it. And because those constituencies, those stakeholders weren't going along the journey with you, they're coming in at the 11th hour to evaluate what the technical teams are delivering. It's creating some real challenges for the visibility that your risk professionals and your compliance and legal teams, all of those stakeholders are really having a hard time kind of grasping how did the sausage get made.
Yeah, that feels like a bad idea, bringing in the security and the data people, privacy people at the end of a project.
Absolutely, yeah. Not the way to do it.
And the other thing that I think maybe people don't understand too is that as you're tackling security and data privacy, it has to be done on every project, right? Like you can't just say, all right, we've solved it. You can't just push a button and then all of your security, issues are solved for every project moving forward. You have to do this every time, right? Is that because that seems like a lot of hassles too.
There's definitely some administrative overhead associated with that. So this is where, some companies have taken the tact of, we're going to launch several POCs and pilots, and we're going to run in multiple directions at once. And it's created some strain on that side. And I think that's where you see that reflected in the results of the report.
Yeah.
I also think there's a little bit of, so some of these projects are external facing, right? So you have, these Gen AI programs or applications are running where an outside person can, access them and access the information they provide. Some of them are internal. I would say the external facing ones, my experience talking to customers, like, man, those are the ones we are making sure that security is a priority. Not that they're not focusing on security on the internal ones, but it's not as much of a risk to the company as if something that's external facing, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. There were two other responses in that question when they were talking about what problems are you facing. That I want, Brett, I want you to address this. There was one that said that there was a lack of maturity in the AI tech, and then there was also a lack of interoperability in the AI tech. I've seen a lot of those other results before, like security, data literacy, the ROI, regulatory issues. But this is the first time I've seen those other two options or results in terms of the maturity and interoperability. What's your takeaway from that? Is that are the data people waiting for better technology to mature, or are they pushing back and say, look, we've got 17 different tools, they have to do a better job of interoperating with each other?
Well, look, the space is moving so fast, right? This is part of the problem, is that every day there's a new tool, right?
Right.
So you're seeing new technologies come really fast, and how fast can they absorb them and learn them and understand them? We've had, one of the survey results was that, hey, customers think that they need, 10 different tools to do all these data management tasks and AI projects to kind of bring all the data together. And that's problematic, right? When you start trying to stitch so many different pieces together, you're dealing with incompatibilities, or you're dealing with constant qualifications of these integrations. And so, at Informatica, we kind of push this idea that, hey, we want to provide a platform approach, a way to use tools together, a simplified way to have end-to-end use case support, those kinds of things. But I certainly, but obviously we're the data management side of it. You still got to interoperate with the AI software and the model software and things like that work outside of our platform. And so there's always interoperability. There's always teams that are technically going to have to figure out how to make these things work together. And I think that, like I said, the technical skill set, I think, is a struggle for them to go, hey, let's make sure we have the right technical people to make sure we can pull all this together.
Right.
Number two, how do we choose the right tools and partners to make sure that they're working together? Like, we work really hard to work with people like a Databricks or Snowflake to integrate our stuff to make it very seamless. Our customers are looking for those really cohesive ways to provide accountability and capabilities back to their customer, back to them on how to get those things done.
Yeah. Blake, anything else to add on that front?
I think Brett summarized it pretty succinctly, but it is a very distinct problem. When you're looking at, and this may help transition, but the notion of ROI, right? And if the expenses that I'm generating to execute these solutions are increasing because I'm bringing in not one or two solutions, but 8 to 10 solutions to facilitate this, it's a real challenge in improving out. That's one of the challenges in proving out that ROI.
Yeah. And so let's jump to the ROI issue. Are you getting a sense that some of the financial people are pushing back on a lot of these projects, or is it more just like you said, like a lot of the data people are saying, like, it's hard to show how much value this is generating?
I think there's multitude of causes around that ROI, right? The expectations of ROI are so high. And I was thinking about this kind of last week. If you think about, like, how is AI portrayed to us in media and those types of things? AI is always this formidable force, right? It's always uber competent. And we haven't reached that point yet, right? Whether it's Skynet or the AMC series Humans, which I loved, AI was always this really capable, mature technology, and you never saw the growing pains of, hey, this isn't quite, and so there is this maturity journey that the capabilities as a whole have to go through. And the expectations are, we've been trained to think, okay, AI is going to be instantaneous and it's going to be immediate and capable. And that's not realistic. So I think that there is some of that managing expectations and trying to get people comfortable with that. I think the costs, as you're seeing, in a small scale environment, you can build out these proofs of concepts and these pilots and these small scale solutions. But when you ramp them up to an enterprise scale, what kind of costs are you incurring? What does that compute look like? There's some significant considerations there that you have to really think through.
Yeah.
And then the last piece is just the use cases. I think some companies really sprinted off and said, okay, we're going to go build this solution, but they didn't really have a use case or a defined problem they were aligning that solution to. So they're kind of trying to reverse engineer the solution to fit the problem. And that's always a problematic approach.
Do you think there were a lot of companies that just said, hey, we have all this data, let's just throw an AI at it and then see what happens?
Well, and then there's definitely like a fear of missing out associated with it, right? Like that's what you've been hearing is we've got to have that first mover advantage. This is going to be huge. AI is going to revolutionize our efficiency. It's going to revolutionize the customer journey, all of the insights that we're going to gain. And so people really seize on like, I can't miss out on this. We understand the impacts that this could have. So, you're really feeling that pressure to go deliver a solution, but sometimes you got to make sure I would say most times you got to know what you're solving for first, rather than just going to build a capability.
Yeah, I think I agree with Blake. I think the inflated expectations on the C-level, the C-suite, the board level has been super high. Like it's just, hey, how can we use AI to revolutionize our company? The teams are working as fast as they can to catch up to that expectation. And to Blake's point, I think some of these projects had grandiose, like, oh, we're just going to replace our complete department over here with AI. And instead, they realize, okay, it's really about I can get some efficiencies and more productivity. Even in Informatica, right? We're using AI in terms of helping our development teams, right? And they're getting productivity increases because they're using AI to do code, but it's still not replacing people. It's just helping them be more efficient and producing code faster and test suites faster, et cetera.
Right. I always love the people that come up to us and talk about AI and they think it's like this magical little wizard that you just wave a magic wand and everything happens. And but on the other side of the coin too is that if it doesn't deliver some value, if you look at it and you go, that's it, like that's a danger too. So it does have to promote some kind of value as well. Otherwise you wouldn't be doing it, So
yeah, it's interesting. There was a McKinsey study that came out late last year that showed that early adopters of Gen AI were seeing some big, like they were seeing double-digit cost savings, double-digit revenue growth. So there is some data points out there that says, done right, you actually can see some big impacts.
Yeah.
And I think to Blake's point, this kind of fear of missing out, like I think it's more of a fear of getting behind or losing competitive edge. Because if you're not doing it, your competitor is, and they're going to figure out some things to get themselves more cost effective, maybe provide a better customer experience and all those things. And you've got to kind of stay sharp and be focused on making sure that doesn't, it's like anything. You might do 100 Gen AI projects and 20 of them might turn out to be the ones that have the biggest impact.
Yeah. And again, I introduced that in the beginning of the show where we were talking about, there's still continued investment in this space. From your survey, 87% said that they were increasing their AI investments in 2025. You would think that with all of these concerns and the slowdowns and 1 out of 3 projects are abandoned or stalling, that there might be a pullback at some point going, okay, let's see if we can get that number better. But you're still seeing, that they're still throwing money at the problem. And again, because of that FOMO, but are there any other reasons to think that throwing more money at these issues will solve it? Or do the other things need to get fixed?
Well, I think there's got to be investments across you can't, like, what are you throwing money at? You can't be just throwing it at one part. You've got to throw it at the entire equation. I mean, the survey also said 86% were investing in more mature data management capabilities, right? Gen AI demands data like no other, no other innovation we've seen. And if you didn't have a mature data sharing capability across your organization, a governed data sharing court, guess what? You're building one now.
Yeah.
Because this is not the old world of, I send an email to somebody off in the corner and ask for approval to a specific data source. This is, I want every data source available to me to make sure I'm getting the most relevant, fit for purpose data. I want to make sure it's of high quality and governed, all these kinds of things. And so all of a sudden data management has become a big part of that. So I think what I'm seeing, and even talking to customers, they're investing across the board. They're scaling not just their Gen AI, kind of teams. They're also scaling data management practices, their governance practices, et cetera, to make sure that, okay, as I stand this up, I'm not just focused on the results. I'm focused on a safe result. I'm focused on an ethical result. And knowing that, yes, I don't think this is going away. I think this is going to be improving. To my point earlier, I think we're seeing results from some companies having positive results. They want to make sure they're doing that, but you got to do it. You got to do it in a very practical, even way across your organization.
Do you think that we will see a pullback at some point from the finance guys at some point, or is it not going to happen?
Sure. At some point, right? The investments can't keep up. Just like Apple stock can't go up forever. At some point, you got to hit some leveling out, and
right.
You got to be able to kind of say, okay, here's the right level of investment for AI for our company. I don't think we're there yet. I think it's continuing to grow and continuing to look for that equilibrium.
Yeah. Now, Blake, you had mentioned the fear of missing out, but I also wanted to bring up another fear. Is there a fear of failing at some of these projects in a couple of ways? One would be, well, if you fail, then you've spent all this money, and that's a bad thing for a lot of companies. But on the other hand, you also are fearful maybe of data getting out, that you don't want to be the company in the headlines that said, oh, well, here you can buy a car for $1, or some of these other high profile cases. But I think when we were talking before the show, there was a discussion of that maybe companies should not be fearful of fear or fearful of failing, right? Like, even the best hitters can only, hit the ball 1 out of 3 times, for example.
Well, and I think that Gen AI is one of those capabilities that, as we've developed Agile over the last 20 years, right? As companies have implemented Agile, this is the perfect use case of why you implemented, your DevOps organizations and all the, data ops and all those capabilities. This is the ultimate use case of, hey, let's fail fast, let's iterate. So I think that a lot of companies are moving past the fear of failure in terms of, hey, we didn't deliver the solution. I think that there's, to Brett's point, you continue to iterate and you continue to work through things. And this is why companies, they're seeing positive returns. They're seeing positive results in the small scale. It's the concerns of how do we scale this up and how do we do this safely and efficiently. And to your point, that's that reputational risk of, if we roll this out at a broad scale and we get it wrong in terms of security, safety, privacy, those types of things, that's where the failure is.
Yeah.
That's what you constitute failure as. Hey, we didn't do we didn't do enough due diligence to make sure that this was going to operate in a safe and secure manner. So that's where I think a lot of companies, and back to the point that I made earlier, bringing those professionals along, bringing your legal teams and your cybersecurity and all those teams along for that journey the whole way through is really the most effective approach to this, because you've got to be looking at ultimately how do we deploy this, to, especially as Brett mentioned, those customer facing instances. If it's internal, that's one thing. And there's a lot of efficiency gains and things like that are focused on there. But when you've got customers or prospects, general consumers interacting with a generative AI product, you've got to be on top of it. There's still a lot of, room to, ground to be made up from an education perspective amongst general consumers of generative AI products, and how to use those things safely and effectively.
Right. Anything else to add, Brett, on that with the fear of failure front?
No, I think I like Blake's statement of fail fast, right? We talk to customers the same way. Yes, what I am encouraged by is the results show that most customers are doing POCs. They are doing pilots. They're not just pushing things into production without spending time understanding, right? Which tells me, hey, some of those, yes, we're having friction because of security or privacy concerns. Some of those POCs or pilots just don't make it because it doesn't turn out to be what they expect it to be. It's better to fail there than to have those public facing or kind of black eye events where you put something out there and it didn't work like you expected. So failing fast is the name of the game before you spend too much money, and iterating and figure out where this thing can add value as quickly as possible.
There was another area of the survey that I wanted to ask you about, and you brought it up with the pressure that a lot of these data leaders are facing from the C-suite, from other business leaders to kind of produce results. Are they expecting too much too soon? Are they expecting this little wizard with the magic wand? Have they bought into the hype too much? And then from the data leader standpoint, do data leaders feels like they're going to be the stick in the mud? Like they're the ones who are going to be like, oh, no, hold on. Here's what we've got to do to get, yes, we can move fast. Yes, we're optimistic. But, do you feel sometimes that you're a stick in the mud?
Well, I think I can speak for our experience here at Informatica, right? There's always, and we've been very careful to put, a governance committee and all the processes in place to make sure we're using AI in an ethical and in a favorable way. Every company's going through that. So there's always the constituency that's going to say, look, here we gave you investments, go fast. There's always the legal team and the compliance team that's going to come back and say, hey, let's just make sure we're doing this and looking at it carefully. We don't want a result that we regret. So I think there's always that balance. And I think from the companies and customers I'm talking to, Blake being a perfect example, one of those, of some of those companies are looking at this in a very responsible way, going, okay, we've got to put guardrails. We've got to make sure that we have committees and things like that help us understand and make sure we're using this to the best of our way, best way possible, which is helping balance out the over exuberance, right? And I think the key to making sure that all that ties together is solid communication, right? One of the things that many of my customers talk about is pulling in the business leaders as part of the process as they start these projects. Everybody's looking at this thing together. They're understanding the results. They're buying in on kind of the outcomes together. All that stuff is communication. It's a top-down model that says we're going to use Gen AI. We're going to get excited about it, but it's working across the entire company to make sure everybody understands how we're using it, what the goals are, and what the outcome should be. Right.
Now, Blake, do you sometimes feel like you're the traffic cop that has to say, slow down, hold on? But that can also be a good thing for a lot of these things because, regulating the speed is probably a good thing for a lot of companies.
Absolutely. I think that there's, like we talked about before, there's a component of this that's managing expectations, right? And here are the foundations of what we need to do. Hopefully for a lot of these CDOs, you've been spending the last several years putting those data management foundations that Brett was alluding to earlier in place, right? But you talk to some newer CDOs who are and data leaders who are scrambling to play catch up from a data management and data governance perspective to get those foundations in place. The good news is you're finally seeing that traction from the C-suite and from the board to pull those things where sometimes it's been more of a push. And some of these newer data leaders have been challenged with, okay, I'm here. I've got a role and a responsibility to improve the value of our data as an asset to the company and to exploit that value, right? Bring that to bear. But I'm dealing with a shoestring budget. I'm putting things together with baling wire and duct tape. I'm a country boy, so that's I know Brett will understand that cliche. But there's this sense of now that the light has gone off, right, or has come on for a lot of senior leaders from the business side to say, we need this. I get it. I see it now. So you're seeing some of these newer data leaders trying to play catch up a bit on that front, but it's also been an opportunity for the more mature programs to either flex the muscle that they've been building and say, hey, we're ready for this. We just have to apply the framework that we built to this new use case, and we're ready to go. or sometimes it's stress tests. It stress tests the framework that you built for your data program to say, okay, what are we ready for AI? What are the gaps? What are the things that we need? And sometimes you do have to manage those expectations. Say, hey, give us 3 months so that we can stand up this framework or deploy these capabilities or whatever we need to do, and then we hit the ground running, in that direction. So there is a little bit of that playing traffic cop, but that's the name of the game.
Yeah. And also I wanted to ask, is there a sense of is there a sense of this disillusionment that could creep in? Sometimes you see that curve. It's like everyone's all gung-ho about something, and then you get that little disillusionment, and then they move forward from there. But it feels like maybe in this case, there's not enough time to be disillusioned because there's always something new coming around. Like we just got through generative AI. Now we're talking about AI agents and agentic AI, and there's always something new that maybe can help you catch up. I've heard even in the data governance space that there are new tools. If you're behind, if your data isn't as good enough, you can use AI to clean that up quicker than you could before, where it was all manual processes or things like that. So use a new AI tool to help you catch up so that your data can be better, and then you're caught up. So there's probably not enough time anymore to be disillusioned even on some of this stuff. Or I might just be crazy.
I agree with you, but by the way, I think anytime we kind of start creeping into the trough of disillusionment, we get a new, agentic AI shows up, or a new kind of a new GPT software,
right, or DeepSeek came out. That was another thing. Yeah.
And so something's always evolving here, and it's getting people excited. Now, to your point, how do we, we at Informatica use AI to make data management simple, to do quality, to do governance and things like that, so that you can accelerate these projects. That's our whole thing, is like, look, if you think of governance, sometimes you feel like, oh gosh, it's this heavy bureaucratic thing. No, it accelerates everything. You can't share data at mass, at scale, across your organization if you do not have the right controls and the right processes in place to make sure that happens safely and securely. But once you do that, the goal is now you're pushing data really fast. And so we're using AI to govern, to create access management policies, to create classifications so that you can know what data is good and fit for purpose for these different projects. That's it's just interesting, because as a vendor in the data management space, we kind of talk about AI for data management, and then we talk about data management for AI, right? Those are kind of two different sides of our business related to AI.
It's going to keep you guys employed. That's the great thing about it.
Well, data is not going away anytime soon. That's for sure.
Yeah. Blake, do you have enough time to think about disillusionment, or is it just you're always looking at the next thing, or just fixing everything that you've got?
No, I would say that you nailed it, Keith. The hype cycle is real, right? There is a trough of disillusionment, but as Brett said, like, as soon as you're looking at, okay, let's take a step back and realistically, what can we achieve with this? There's another leap coming, right? So it's just one hype cycle layered on another, and they seem to be staggered at this rate that you're like, as soon as you hit one trough, you're into another spike, and that spike is seemingly solving for some of the challenges that you saw with the prior iteration. So there's, I think that there is some disillusionment, but at the same time, you've got to keep your eye on the horizon, because the next thing is coming to solve for that. And, and it seems to be accelerating, which is, bizarre. It's crazy to think that it could accelerate, but it is.
I saw a stat the other day of how many users were using GPT when it first came out within days, right? Millions. The staggering pace at which adoption is happening compared to where it was, compared to something 10 years ago, right? It's just absolutely amazing how fast the technology space is changing as a result of all this.
Yeah, it's a great point to end on. I think that the optimism is there for everybody. So again, great stuff, guys. Thanks again for joining us on the show. I loved hearing from your insights.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
All right, that's going to be all the time we have for this week's episode. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any thoughts below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.